Right? Picture the scene. You are the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, sitting in your first cabinet meeting of the new year, and you have just received polling data showing your party has crashed to third place for the first time since you won a landslide election barely 6 months ago. Third place, behind Reform UK, a party that won 5 seats in the general election. Behind the Conservatives, the party you absolutely demolished at the ballot box. Your approval rating is minus 59%. There are whispers of leadership challenges from your own Health Secretary and former Deputy Prime Minister. The local elections are looming in May, threatening to deliver an absolute shellacking. So what do you tell your cabinet? Do you panic? Do you acknowledge a crisis? No. You tell them to ignore the polls, stay focused, and show hard work and determination. Welcome to Sir Keir Starmer's 2026, where denial is not just a river in Egypt, it is apparently official government strategy. Quick favor, if you are loving this political chaos, hit that subscribe button and smash the notification bell. Over 94% of you have not subscribed yet. It is completely free, takes literally 2 seconds, and genuinely helps us keep bringing you these stories. Cheers if you did. Right, let us dive into this polling catastrophe. So here are the numbers, and they are absolutely brutal. The latest research from YouGov for the Times shows Labour languishing in third place with just 17% of voting intention. 17. The party that won a massive majority in July with roughly 34% of the vote has lost half its support in 6 months. That is not a decline. That is a collapse. That is a political implosion of historic proportions. The Conservatives are in second place with 19%, which is marginally better but hardly triumphant for a party that suffered their worst election defeat in living memory. And storming ahead in first place is Reform UK with 26%. Nigel Farage's party, which won 5 parliamentary seats, is now polling as the most popular party in Britain. Let that sink in for a moment. The survey polled more than 2,300 adults on January 3rd and 4th, so this is current data reflecting recent sentiment. This is not some outlier from a dodgy pollster with questionable methodology. This is YouGov, one of Britain's most respected polling organizations, showing that Labour has become the third most popular party in the country they are currently governing. The optics are absolutely catastrophic. Imagine explaining to voters that you won power promising change, stability, and competence, and within 6 months you have become less popular than a party led by Nigel Farage that most people assumed would fade into irrelevance after the election. It is political malpractice on an epic scale. What will be particularly alarming for the Labour hierarchy is that the Conservatives have overtaken them. Kemi Badenoch's Tories, who are still recovering from 14 years of government culminating in electoral disaster, who are dealing with their own internal divisions and leadership questions, who were supposed to spend years in the wilderness rebuilding, are now more popular than the governing party. That is not supposed to happen. Governments typically enjoy at least a honeymoon period where voters give them the benefit of the doubt. Labour's honeymoon lasted approximately 3 weeks before the freebies scandal broke, and it has been downhill ever since. The Liberal Democrats are on 16%, just 1 point ahead of the Greens with 15%. So we have a 5-party system where the governing party is in third place, trailing a populist insurgent party in the opposition they crushed 6 months ago. British politics has become completely fragmented, and Labour is hemorrhaging support in multiple directions. Moderate voters are returning to the Conservatives. Left-wing voters are defecting to the Greens. Working-class voters concerned about immigration are flooding to Reform UK. Labour is being squeezed from every angle, and they have nobody to blame but themselves. Sir Keir has already had to face down rumours of revolt within Labour and talk of potential leadership challenges. The names being whispered in Westminster corridors are Health Secretary Wes Streeting and former Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner. Now, both have publicly denied they want the top job, which is exactly what you would expect them to say at this stage. Politicians never admit leadership ambitions until the moment they launch their campaign. Denials are meaningless in Westminster. What matters is whether they are being discussed as credible alternatives, and clearly they are. Streeting is young, media-savvy, and more willing to challenge Labour orthodoxy. Rayner has working-class credentials and appeals to the traditional Labour base in ways Starmer simply cannot. If the polling continues to deteriorate and the local elections deliver the expected disaster, those leadership whispers will become roars. At the first cabinet meeting of 2026, Sir Keir tried to dismiss the worrying polling trends. Note the language there. He tried to dismiss them. He did not successfully dismiss them. He attempted to wave away the existential threat facing his government, as if positive thinking and determination can overcome catastrophic public disapproval. Starmer called for cabinet discipline and a focus on tackling the cost of living in the first meeting of his top team in what could be a potentially critical year for his premiership. Critical is doing a lot of work in that sentence. This is not just another year. This is a year that will determine whether Starmer survives as Prime Minister or becomes a cautionary tale about how to destroy a massive majority in record time. He told his senior ministers that their challenge for 2026 is to show hard work, focus, and determination in helping to ease the financial burden on households. It is a perfectly reasonable message in isolation. Government should absolutely focus on cost of living issues. People are struggling with bills, mortgages, and everyday expenses. But here's the problem. Labour has been in power for 6 months. What have they been doing until now if tackling cost of living is suddenly the priority for 2026? Were they just warming up? Getting comfortable? Learning where the toilets are in number 10? Voters expect action, not promises that action will begin soon. Starmer told his colleagues at the meeting in Downing Street, "I do not underestimate the scale of the task, but I have no doubt about this team. Governments do not lose because polls go down. They lose when they lose belief or nerve. We will do neither." It is a defiant statement, the kind of rallying cry leaders deliver when things are going catastrophically wrong and morale is collapsing. The claim that governments do not lose because polls go down is technically accurate, but misleadingly framed. Governments lose elections, and polls are predictive of election results. If your polls remain this terrible until the next general election, you will lose. The only question is whether you lose narrowly or get absolutely obliterated. Starmer is trying to separate polls from electoral outcomes as if they are unrelated phenomena. They are not. Polls measure public opinion. Elections are determined by public opinion. If public opinion stays as negative, Labour will be destroyed at the ballot box. We are seeing the same pattern from the Prime Minister across his political career. Pattern? That's arguing this is an isolated incident, but consistent behavior revealing Sir Keir's true priorities. When he was in Jeremy Corbyn's shadow cabinet, he consistently called for a second referendum. Second referendum. That was Remainers' strategy for reversing Brexit. Have another vote. Hope for different result. Keep voting until you get answer you want. That's not democracy. That's using democratic process to overturn democratic result you dislike. He said, and this quote is absolutely damning, "As a party, we have already voted 3 times against a second referendum, with a 3-line whip behind it. And I can tell you today that an incoming Labour government would legislate for a referendum immediately upon taking power and hold that referendum within 6 months. Legislate for referendum immediately, hold it within 6 months. That's not careful consideration of whether circumstances warrant another vote. That's predetermined commitment to reversing first referendum before even knowing what Brexit would look like. It reveals Sir Keir never accepted the 2016 result and was determined to overturn it at first opportunity. As leader of the opposition, he once said, when asked to choose between Davos or Westminster, Davos. Davos over Westminster. That's extraordinary answer revealing where his loyalties lie. Davos is a World Economic Forum, annual gathering of global elites discussing international governance, globalization, multilateral institutions. Westminster is British Parliament, seat of British democracy, where British laws are made. Asked to choose, Sir Keir picked the international elite gathering over British democratic institution. Why? Because Westminster is too constrained. Too constrained by what? By democratic accountability? By national sovereignty? By having to respect voters? That quote reveals Sir Keir sees British democracy as obstacle to implementing globalist agenda he prefers. How could any British politician choose a skiing resort over his own country? That's rhetorical question highlighting the absurdity. But the answer is clear. Sir Keir prioritizes international institutions, global governance, multilateral cooperation over national sovereignty and democratic accountability. As Prime Minister, he introduced a so-called Great EU Reset scheme, handing over our fishing rights and massively overpaying for the Erasmus scheme. Handing over fishing rights. British fishing was symbolic Brexit issue, representing sovereignty over natural resources. Giving it back to EU demonstrates Sir Keir's willingness to surrender Brexit gain for closer European ties. Massively overpaying for Erasmus, that student exchange program that Britain left after Brexit because costs exceeded benefits. Rejoining at inflated price shows Sir Keir values European integration over fiscal responsibility. Last month, he said, "We are getting closer relationships with the EU on a number of fronts, including trade and the economy, because that is good for businesses across our country. Within these constraints, we will move closer. Within these constraints, we will move closer." What constraints? Manifesto commitments? Public opinion? The constraints Sir Keir identifies are ones is systematically dismantling through incremental alignment that avoids triggering political backlash. It's boiling frog strategy, gradual temperature increase so the frog doesn't notice it's being cooked. Except British voters are starting to notice. Starmer has always been devoted to multinational, globalist bureaucratic organizations more than Britain, more than preserving the nation-state, more than sovereignty, and more than respecting the will of the voters. Always been devoted. That's arguing this is core ideological commitment, not tactical positioning or pragmatic adjustment. Sir Keir genuinely believes supranational governance is superior to national sovereignty, that experts in Brussels make better decisions than democratic processes in Britain, that global institutions should override national preferences. Whether you agree with that worldview or not, it's fundamentally incompatible with Brexit's core premise, that Britain should govern itself through institutions accountable to British voters. This approach is not popular, and it will not lead to economic growth. Not popular is evident from polling showing Labour collapsing. Will not lead to growth is economic argument that European model, with its heavy regulation and sclerotic institutions, doesn't produce dynamism or prosperity. Brexit was supposed to unleash British potential through deregulation, trade deals, innovation. Realigning with European regulatory framework prevents that. Despite several humiliating losses in Parliament just last night and concerns over cost, security, and consent, the government is still pressing ahead with handing over British territory to Mauritius, an ally of China, against the will of the British people. Handing over British territory to Mauritius. That's Chagos Islands, strategic archipelago including Diego Garcia military base. Mauritius' ally of China raises security concerns about Chinese influence over strategic territory. Against will of British people emphasizes democratic deficit where government pursues policy despite public opposition. Taxpayers could be forced to pay billions of pounds for the privilege. Pay billions to give away British territory. That's not just strategically questionable. That's fiscally insane. Britain is paying to surrender sovereignty.